Hello, friends, and welcome back to Shelley Skylines BrizVegas. In today's episode, we're looking at Kangaroo Point, a suburb with a dramatic landscape and a fascinating past. Nestled along the Brisbane River, the cliffs of Kangaroo Point aren't just a stunning feature. They've played a key role in shaping the city's architecture and history. So let's jump into it. This is very exciting because this part of my city has been a bit neglected for far too long, and there is nothing better than a blank canvas. But I think the most important thing to start with is the roads. We of course have the famous Story Bridge connecting Fortitude Valley to Kangaroo Point here. This then leads off in a few directions to different parts of Brisbane, quite a busy little part of town during peak hour. We have the road that leads off to East Brisbane and then these ones that head southbound, giving you access to the big highway off that away, or continuing on to the inner southern suburbs. And if you're new here, we're doing a pretty faithful recreation of this place, as much as we can. So I spent a fair bit of time looking close up at all the number of lanes in these roads and what direction they go in and so forth. And it took a really long time, so I've spared you the agony of watching me do that. So now that we have some roads in, I think one of the most interesting parts of this place is the cliffs. They actually play such a big role in the history of Brisbane development. When the first European settlers arrived in 1825, they put convicts to work quarrying sandstone from these cliffs. And the rock would then be used to build some of Brisbane's most iconic buildings that still exist today, like the Queensland Parliament House, built in 1868, the General Post Office, built in 1872, the Treasury Building, built in 1886, Old Customs House, built in 1889, and Brisbane's oldest standing building, the good old Windmill Tower, built all the way back in 1828. These days, the cliffs are famous for their rock climbing and abseiling, and some lovely little parks and picnic spots along the shores of the Brisbane River. And at the lookout up top, thanks to its fantastic position taking in views all around the city. So this is a great opportunity to create some custom parks and little vignettes all around the place. So let us begin by carving into this cliffside here. And actually, I've pondered about changing some of the textures in this map. But the reason that I didn't is because I always felt like this cliffside looks exactly like the sandstone from the cliffs here at Kangaroo Point. And I stand by my statement. Although I guess we better put them in first to make sure. Just a smidge of flooding. Hopefully that goes away. Something a tad concerning though. When I did some of the demolition, some poor Sims are now not only homeless, but stuck in a space-time continuum, just floating aimlessly above the Brisbane River. Interesting. So while we're doing some of this foundational stuff around the river, I might also whack in some of these marinas you see along the other side of the point. And fun fact, you can actually put the passenger ships down using Find It. Though it would be nice to have some smaller ones, it still adds to the effect. But back to the cliffs. Let's get a bit of life into this place by adding some paths and some fine shrubbery. So quick side note, when I was looking at this place on Google Earth, I noticed lots of these cute tiny tropical palm looking things. They're dotted all across the cliff face here, so I'm going to add in some palms, but sink them into the terrain to give the same effect. Our Kangaroo Point cliffs are coming along nicely. I've just added in a bunch more trees and made a lot of these little areas park or hang around spots too. Now I wanted to get into some of the houses around here, starting with the ones on top of the big cliff. Unfortunately, I got a little bit carried away and forgot to record the footage here, so let's just do a quick little tour of where I got up to. There are some super cool buildings up here looking over the cliffs and a perfect view of the city. I looked at the real-life photos and tried to mimic the skyline as much as possible, and it's looking fabulous. I think I have a new fave spot in BrizVegas. And the other plus is we now have some Sims starting to move in, so people are enjoying the recreation. One of the notable houses we have on the corner here is called Lamb House, a beautiful old house built in the early 1900s. Obviously very modern and not a replica, but it's still a very nice house here. Another exciting thing about this build is this is the first time that I'm getting into the French assets pack. So across the road from Lamb House here, we have the Church of Latter-day Saints sitting rather prominently. I don't know how they managed to score this prime real estate, but good for them. It's a big white building, so I just chucked a couple of these new French signature buildings here. Quite fitting. Loving it. On the corner here is a big block of apartments, and I just joined a few of these French medium density residential together for something a bit funky. How do you say funky in French? And then down here we have the French elementary school. So chic. So nice to have such beautiful new assets to play with. And besides that, I've just started to dot in some residential around here with these bigger landmarks, and it's starting to take shape. Now, while we're talking houses, we have a few other wonderful heritage listed ones around here. In fact, Kangaroo Point is considered one of the oldest suburbs in Brisbane, so it's no surprise. And a lot of the still standing heritage houses around here date back to the mid-1800s. I wanted to look at this one in particular. It's called Alpha Cottage, an absolutely cute little Queenslander style of cottage built in 1883. The reason this one is interesting is if you check this out on the map, it's basically the only thing on this block that seems to have survived the wrath of modernization. Just this little place sitting here, surrounded by all the skyscrapers. So I found some pictures online of the house up close from when it last sold in 2022. It seems it's had a lot of TLC put into it, and it's looking so good. Just so quaint. I just love these little Queenslander cottages. So I was doing some browsing, and I think this little house is as good as it's going to get. Now, to remove some of the bibs and bobs, and of course we need to recolor it. Just bringing up the reference picture again, I also love these little garden beds out the front, and I just can't wait to build it, so let's get into it. Loving it. Now, to really get the effect, we need to add in some modern buildings all around. Ah, so cute. And with that, our little Alpha House cottage is complete. And I think this will stand out even more when we add in even more buildings around it. So while we're over this side, let's look at the Story Bridge. This is, of course, a Brisbane icon, and we're not really doing it much justice right now. It's wonky, and it shouldn't be. It should be more even. Man, this is a nightmare dealing with all the various terrain around the place. I made this other side high when I was super paranoid about flooding, and now everything is built on it. So we just kind of have to live with it. For now. Anyway, while I fix this, did you know construction of this bridge began back in 1935? It's hard to imagine how things were up until this bridge existed. And fun fact, it was actually designed by the same engineer as the Sydney Harbour Bridge, Dr. John Bradfield. And you might be wondering, where did the name came from? It was actually taken from a prominent public servant named John Douglas Story, who was a huge advocate for advancing the city's infrastructure, and in particular making sure there was a bridge here connecting Kangaroo Point to the rest of the city. Fascinating. And if you're from Brisbane, you may not realise that this was actually a toll bridge back in the day. To help recover its construction costs, you would pay a shilling for cars and a penny for pedestrians. A small price by today's standards when you think about all the other toll roads around Brisbane and beyond. And this toll remained in place until 1947 when it was finally paid off and removed. Thank God I don't have to pay a toll for every time I've screwed up this damn road. But look, it will do. Until I get sick of it again. I think it will help me if we add in some of the dang nature down under here. And I guess I never looked at it up close before, but I was lucky enough to go on a bit of a cruise around the Brisbane River a few months ago. And I took some up-close footage down here, which I can use as inspiration. It's quite tranquil, actually. Alright, time for some more fine shrubbery. Goodness me, so much city building. It's time for a beer. And as usual, there are of course some local pubs around here and some very old ones indeed. The most Queenslandery name for a pub that I'm aware of, the Pineapple Hotel. Right here on Main Street, it has been serving beverages to the fine people of Kangaroo Point since 1886. And in terms of the building for it, you know the drill. I can't go past the signature building when it comes to Queensland pubs. It is just the most, or I should say the only fitting building that we have. In this case, I've decided to whack two together, just for funsies. Let's customise it a bit though to match the colours and surrounding bits, and of course, it's got to be yellow and green. It looks like a bloody pineapple. It's funny too, the word pineapple comes up a bit when it comes to Kangaroo Point. I thought maybe there used to be a pineapple farm here or something, but I don't think so. For example, I also found this old real estate ad from 1920 showcasing some of the lots available for sale in Kangaroo Point. And it was called, of course, the Pineapple Estate. How tropical, how Queenslandery. I guess that was the vibe they were just trying to sell. I can't really find any information that links this fruit specifically to the suburb. But anyway, I guess the pub is doing its thing. Even the deer are coming in for a schooner of 4X. Now, we haven't focused on too many city services yet, although beer is obviously an essential service. But I was working my way around and I noticed on the map there is actually a hospital down here. Quite a lovely spot for it. It's known as St. Vincent's Hospital today, but it was previously called Mount Olivet, and it was built in 1957. Now, the reason this is interesting is I discovered the land that this hospital was built on was originally owned by a doctor named Lillian Violet Cooper, if you please. It turns out Dr. Cooper was the first ever registered woman doctor and surgeon in Queensland, and the second in all of Australia. And when she passed away in 1947, the land was donated to develop a hospice, with a focus on helping the less fortunate. So hopefully this French hospital should do some justice for Dr. Lillian. And actually, while it's not a hospital, we also have this French college. That looks like it fits in here. And this also makes me think Kangaroo Point is shaping up to be quite a wealthy suburb, which is honestly pretty realistic, but perhaps it wouldn't hurt to dot in some of the French low-rent houses around the hospital as a bit of a nod to the original intent of this place. They actually kind of look like a hospital, to be honest. So yeah, all of these buildings are just so nice. Very pleased with this French assets pack. If you haven't checked it out yet, I highly recommend it. And with that, the time has come. The most satisfying part of all. It's time to fill out the rest of these little neighbourhoods now. To the time lapse. Now let us really see the improvements with a few before and afters. So we have our luxurious little waterfront areas along here near the Story Bridge. A lovely mix of residential, hotels, cafes and parks and fine shrubbery. We have more sprawling neighbourhoods along the other side. And of course our new and improved Kangaroo Point cliffs, complete with all the recreation that the good people of BrizVegas could ever want for, and some damn good views of the city. Goodness me, BrizVegas is really getting pretty huge now. So I hope you enjoyed our latest edition and learnt some fun facts along the way. But for now, I'll catch you in the next one. Okay, thanks, bye.